Oh geez, apparently a raff is a very bad thing, because whenever someone sees it, they get all huffy and say, "Ah, Farig! A raff!" Alright, now that the bad jokes are out of my system, what's a giraffe doing in Spain and Portugal, the real-world equivalent of the Paldea region? Well, this one's quite simple, really. The answer is twofold. First, giraffes are one of the most iconic zoo animals, along with the likes of elephants and lions. So realistically, a giraffe Pokemon could be anywhere. And this is a big part of why a lot of these kinds of Pokemon were in Galar too. Heck, England invented zoos, and they got quite popular and spread across Europe. Royal families, especially the Portuguese one, loved their menageries, and they would fill them with exotic animals long before the first official zoo. And this practice also expanded to ancient China. During the reign of the second Ming Emperor, Yongle was given 2 giraffes in the early 1400s, and when given, they were told that they were Shilin, a Chinese mythological beast traditionally said to look like a cross between a deer or horse and a lion or dragon. So not a giraffe exactly, but definitely close enough to be believable. I mean, how else are you supposed to introduce the weirdness that is a giraffe, besides couching it in a phrasing your crowd would have to understand? If you don't put it in words they would get, you'd have to basically be like,
"And I now present this thing."
And since the Chinese Shilin eventually made it to Japan and became the Kirin, it's no surprise that Game Freak would make a Pokemon like Girafarig so early in the games, especially in a region that's all about Japanese tradition. And plus, with the implied attempted carnivory of the tailhead, it's just like the carnivory of the lion part of the Shilin, Kirin thing. Notably, Kirin are described as having scales like a dragon, which is a bit reminiscent of the spikes going down both Girafarig and Farigiraf's neck and back, though the color scheme of Farigiraf's spikes are now much more reminiscent of the manes on actual giraffes, which are dark with light tips. In fact, the connection between giraffes and these mythical beasts made during the Ming Dynasty had such a lasting impact in East Asia that in both Japanese and Korean, their word for giraffe and their word for these mythical beasts, Shilin or Kirin, are the same. Yeah, this is a Kirin. But speaking of giraffes being weirdos that are kind of like a mix of other animals, the Romans knew about them too, of course, though they called them camel leopards, because they resemble a camel with the spots of a leopard, which again could be why Girafarig has a camel-y head and an implied carnivorous head. But the second and more interesting reason Farigiraf is here is simple too. Giraffes used to live in Spain. Natively. They're just all dead now. But it wasn't just any giraffe either, oh no, it was the 4-horned giraffe known as Decennotherium rex. Rex meaning king. It is considered the king of giraffes. It lived during the Miocene epoch, approximately 9 million years ago, in what is today Spain, and it was discovered in 2017. So, very recent actually. But why has the tail taken over its head? And why is it shaped like this specifically? Could it be because unlike Girafarig, it finally has a super long neck, and its psychic head is up in the clouds? The head of its main body and the head from its tail have become one. Both of Farigiraf's brains are connected through thick nerves, increasing its psychic energy, and it can emit psychic waves from the antenna on its head. It's always mindful of its surroundings, and while it can detect danger in an instant, there are times when its body cannot react as fast as its 2 brains can think. Oh man, I mean big mood. But also, I recently did a video about which Spanish inventions would probably have Pokemon based on them in these games. It was a fun little prediction video, you should check it out. But notably, the spacesuit was one of them. Well, not so much the spacesuit you're probably thinking of. It's not like the moon landing NASA one. Rather, it's the precursor to them. It's 1936, and this military colonel is so sick of this place, he just wants to get really, really high. So he invents the first pressurized suit in order to survive being on the edge of space in a high-altitude balloon. Just like this giraffe, whose head is on a high-altitude neck. Haha! And since it uses its 4 horns, which on giraffes are actually called ossicones, as antenna, in order to pick up psychic signals, you could see that as a reference to antenna on tall radio towers, or even satellites and other man-made objects in or reaching for space. And not to mention the fact that there's actually a giraffe constellation, it's just not a very well-known one. Remember a bit ago how I mentioned that Romans called giraffes camel leopards? Well, let me introduce you to Camelopardalis, the giraffe constellation. And you know who else loves stars and constellations? Yeah, the Spanish! A Spanish dude invented the planetarium, a Spanish optometrist invented the telescope, and star charting was never the same. thanks to these. And then consider just how connected psychic abilities are to the stars and their positions and whatnot. And it just makes a high-altitude beast like a giraffe being psychic type work all the better, especially in this region. But this Pokemon is not just about its mind moves. Looking at its official description on Pokemon.com, the thick, sturdy head from its tail provides good defense for the head of the main body. When the head from its tail closes its mouth, Farigiraf'n whips its long neck around in an attack that deals brutal physical damage. The force of this attack is said to be able to pulverize stone and crush steel beams. I mean, have you seen giraffes fighting? It looks like a headache and a half, smacking each other with their necks. Oof. So I'm sure Farigiraf'n enjoys the added protection, hence one of its new abilities, Armor Tail, which at first is funny because it has no tail, but then you gotta remember its tail moved up when evolving and is now wrapped around its neck and head. It's just like a suit of armor protecting its sensitive bits. Sorta like a spacesuit, huh? And then its other new ability is a reference to another thing that giraffes do, which is chew cud. Hence the ability being called Cud Chew. This ability lets it eat a berry twice, because chewing cud is something that most ungulate-like animals do, actually. They eat food, chew it all up, swallow it, and then sometime later they just burp it up and chew it again. Swallow it again. Fun. Now, remember Yonglaw's giraffes being explained as Xiling? Well, there's actually another mythological giraffe of sorts that fits Farigiraf'n even better. The Questing Beast, otherwise known as the Barking Beast. It comes from the legends of King Arthur, particularly La Morte d'Arthur, and works derivative of it. And it was a particular beast that had the head and neck of a snake, the body of a leopard, the haunches of a lion, and the feet of a hart. A hart being a male deer, not the organ, that'd be weird. But honestly, that sounds a lot like a third-party description of a giraffe. Someone trying to explain what a giraffe is to peasants who had never seen anything like it before. But if you take that description literally, yeah, it's quite monstrous. But anyways, the Questing Beast is also known as the Barking Beast because of the awful yowling and barking noises that always comes from its stomach. It was born this way after a curse put upon its mother, a princess, by her brother, after she had lied and said he raped her, and their dad had sicked his hounds on the poor brother, and he cursed her to give birth to a child who would be a horrible-looking monster, and would forever sound like the hounds that hunted him down, until it itself is granted the sweet release of death by being hunted itself. And this was all because she was in love with the brother, and also slept with a devil when it promised to make her brother love her if she did, but said devil tricked her into the false rape accusation. Medieval writing, everybody. But don't worry, it's okay, because the guy who hunts the poor beast converted to Christianity in order to kill it. And that's the moral of the story. It's all okay in the end, right? It's a conversion story. And although Arthurania is not inherently Spanish, as we often see in games like Civilization, the medieval and Renaissance Spaniards were obsessed with getting people to convert to Christianity, no matter the probably unrelated reasons the person actually converts. As long as they get baptized, they're all good. So I would definitely say that aspect of the story with the Questing Beast is very related to Spanish history. But what do you think? Have anything to add? Curious about what other Spanish and Portuguese inventions might have Pokemon based on them? Then definitely check out this video here. And until next time, never stop using your noggin.